I think you ought to know. About men's radio. The place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show. It's men's radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. And radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
Oh, very, very good afternoon to you. Yes, it is the Daily Show here on Men's Radio Station with, oh look, Russ Kane and me, Phil Dave. Very good afternoon. Hope that Russ has managed to sort out his technical glitches now. But anyway.
I don't know. Can you hear me now, Phil?
Loud and clear.
Oh, that's a marvellous, marvellous thing. How absolutely fantastic is that? Yeah, it's just weird. I don't know. I think my machine really is finally dead. I think that is where we're at.
But if you don't mind me saying, Russell, it looks lovely to see you so relaxed on the sofa. You look like you're home.
I'm not on the sofa. I'm on my very charming chair.
Well, now you are. No, but now you are. But 2 seconds ago, you looked like you were about to sort of maybe present, I don't know, an episode of, well, Good Morning with Anne and Nick. Oh, he's gone again. Oh, well, there you go. Easy come, easy go. Never mind. Poor Russ. I'm afraid he's having dreadful technical issues at the moment, you see. I think we need to have a whip round and buy him an internet connection. In meantime, you are listening to The Daily Show with half of Russ Kane and me, Phil Dave, with you through until 1 o'clock this afternoon, broadcasting to you live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and of course, mensradiostation.com and the Men's Radio Station app, as well as Deluxe Radio and Radio Waves. Whichever way you are listening to us, you are most welcome. Thank you very much indeed for the pleasure of your company.
Your company, you're marvellous, marvellous.
So you need to say a couple of hellos, you see, because now Russ doesn't have, unfortunately, the messages come up on his screen now.
I'm going up to buy a new computer. I've had it with it. I really can't put up with it.
We'll speak afterwards, Mr. Kane. We'll rattle through. We'll say hello to Sen Monroe, who is listening. Paul Andrews says it's Gilbert back again. Alone, naturally. Kimmy Lashmar.
Very good, very good, very good.
Yeah, I see what he did there. Kimmy Lashmar says, hello, sadly, I'm back at work on Wednesday. Boo. Oh, Kimmy, that's not sadly. That's, look, we're sorry, we're not necessarily going to be able to see
What do you do exactly for a living?
Oh,
yeah.
I don't ask questions. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's why I get the big bucks.
Okay. Sen Monroe says, we need to get you on. I can see your voice. Right.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. Sorry, there's a program called I Can See Your Voice. That's it. So it's a new BBC reality show, a little bit like The X Factor and The Voice combined, or something bizarre like that.
Yeah, it took about, I think, 7 minutes to write the whole show. Basically, I know. Let's get The X Factor. Let's get The Voice. Yeah, this will do.
I've yet to see it.
Put a bit of human drama in it.
That way. No, I haven't seen it. I'm not sure if it will stay that way. Ed Grossman says, Duar, happy Montag. Judy Albert, happy Monday. Paul Andrews, new PC and 5G broadband needed at the Kane household. Paul Claridge says, good afternoon, everyone. Kimmy Lashmar says, I work in a garden centre restaurant. Oh, Kimmy, fabulous. I want to know which one. Don't message it in public, but I want to know which one. Come and understand.
Excuse me, can we have 2 more coffees over here, please? Thank you, miss.
White. Ben Monroe reckons.
Very thoroughly. She's not getting a tip.
Well, quite. Sen Monroe reckons that Russ has been sabotaged by the by the mafioso gun for hire. That is Charles Hawtrey.
Completely lost me. No wonder.
Yeah, not going to lie. I'm not with you on that one.
I really don't get that. Then I'm not following it.
So pleased that Russ said that, because I'm not going to lie. I haven't got a clue what I just said.
I don't understand it.
Martin Allen says,
move on.
Martin Allen says,
it's so frustrating. I'm so sorry, gang. I can't read any of your messages because they don't come up on my phone. Now, the phone works absolutely perfectly. Martin Allen, good afternoon, all. That's lovely. And Linda Dave, do we know her? Linda Dave. No, it's. I think my machine has finally just said we can't do it because Phil and I were chatting very happily before the show, and I wouldn't mind, but I have got so much more stuff to do. We've got Zoom calls coming up, so this ain't good. Anyhow, there we is, and as you can see, perfectly stable internet connection, perfectly stable connection on the phone. So that's where we're at.
I think, in the famous words of Sarah Brightman and Andrea Bocelli, time to say goodbye to the laptop.
I thought it was Sarah Brightman. I fell in love with a Starship Trooper. Nearly messed that up.
Maybe. Ed Grossman quite rightly says who. I think he was referring to the name of Sen's mafioso chap. Sen says if he checks his earlier post by Ray Gelato, all be crystal clear.
Yeah, well, it's all getting a bit obscure. Let's get back to a men's radio station with mental health and well-being. How was your weekend? Went to Soho both Saturday and Sunday, and I have to say it was lovely to see the place so alive. Now, if you're a resident of Soho, not so lovely because the noise would be deafening, and apparently it goes on till about 4 in the morning. Although they shut the restaurants and do all of that sort of stuff, people are what's the word? Cavorting. Let us say cavorting.
I like the word cavorting. Haven't heard it.
Under the word cavorting, you can have urinating and defecating in the street. Welcome to Britain in 2021. It's absolutely disgusting. But during lunchtime, it was fabulous to see so many people out and about having a great time. What was sad is just walking back to the car and then driving down Regent Street, the number of huge shops that are just gone. And I know I go on about it, but they're not coming back because that must be some of the most expensive rents in London. We're not London-centric, but they must be some of the most expensive rents. And frankly, you've got to think who is going to come in and take those big double shops on. I mean, they're just not going to happen, is it? That's the problem.
Well, I suspect that, and it's curious actually, you're talking about outdoor space because that is obviously the theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, which of course starts today, which you may well be aware of. Thank you very much indeed, Sen Monroe, for acknowledging that. But it's curious because to me, I actually find a great deal of comfort from just walking around town. And I realize what it is what I like about it is the familiarity. It's sort of like a large safety blanket. And I feel as though that with some of those shops that are never destined to be opened again, some of the patches in the sort of safety blanket are gone forever, and it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, and it was just a short drive because I came out of sort of Glasshouse Street, went down to Piccadilly Circus, and wow. And just coming up some of the side streets as well. It's really been hit very, 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 very hard. But people couldn't wait to enjoy themselves. And I'm in the camp which says, yeah, people have got to get back to life now. And the restaurants were thriving, which was great to see because, to be honest, as we know from all of you who are in the hospitality trade, you've got a year to try and make up. So, Phil, I've got a question for you. You've seen what it's like there. You've seen what the outdoor dining and everything looks like. They're putting up the gazebos and shoving in. There's no social distancing, by the way. If anyone's going to ask, there's none whatsoever. Forget that.
Can I just point out, sorry, that in the restaurants, the guidance for hospitality is the rule is 1 meter plus. That has always been the way. So I know that we're used to seeing 2 meters. Make no mistake, I don't even think people are doing 1 meter plus. But that is supposedly the guidance. So it will always look a little bit different to when you're just out and about anyway, because allegedly in everyday life, you're supposed to keep 2 meters apart. But for some reason in hospitality, COVID doesn't disturb restaurants or pubs. And as a result of it, you're welcome to stick to 1 meter plus. I think it was a pacifier, but still.
Well, anyway, look, let's not be silly. The chairs were all rammed. I mean, absolutely rammed together. But I'm just wondering with capacity, because they're all outside and on the gazebos, and it all looks very jolly because the weather yesterday was beautiful. Is anybody in the trade could tell us, is that the same capacity that you would have if they were all sitting inside?
Ah, interesting.
Because I'm just thinking how they've got to make this money up. They've got to make it up. They've had a year of absolute hell. and all the bars, restaurants, pubs, etc., they've all got to make the money up. The other thing that I think will happen, and again, it's Little London centric, forgive me, but it's all part of what makes life tick. I think this will be here to stay. I think they will pedestrianize, whether we like it or whether we don't. I mean, they've already pedestrianized a lot of Soho, and I think they will pedestrianize it permanently. And those outdoor things will be a permanent thing. British weather, go figure. But I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's how it's going to work out.
Ramsey says, is it just me, or is Phil coming across twice as loud as Russ? Is there any way of balancing the respective volumes? So Ramsey, I have to tell you, the problem that we've got is that because poor Russ is having to use his mobile for the connection today, it probably will sound a little bit different, because I'm using my little studio setup, as you can probably tell from the microphone that's in front of me. And I'm afraid that Russ has to make do amend with what he's got until he replaces his beautiful paperweight that sits in front of him at his desk. So, sorry, his laptop that sits in front of him at his desk. So we have to, we have to do something with that.
If I send it in for repair, I'm stuck, because it'll be gone for like 2 weeks. These things always are. If I send it in for repair, we think we know what it is, but if I send, this is so dumb. If we send it in for repair, right, then that's 2 weeks, and I've got a lot of writing. I've got a hell of a lot of writing to do, because I'm 12 months behind with the book. Not to mention all the Zoom calls, conference calls, all the rest of the stuff, plus the endless emails. So there we are. I'm sorry it's not as loud as you would like. Absolutely nothing I can do about it. But there we go. Let me try one thing. You carry on. Just take me off screen for a second, Philip.
Righto. Well, in that case, you go off screen, and whilst you do that, I shall try and catch up with a few messages here. Ed Grossman says, next Monday is the day. Indeed it is, Ed. You refer to, I assume, the day when we can all start hugging one another again. Not that I have a particular interest to do that, and really wasn't much of a hugger before COVID, to tell you the truth. But even so, more importantly, it's the day we can hopefully start eating indoors at restaurants and bars, which will most welcome, I'm sure. Stephen Marsh says, yes, Paul, and I wish that Alison Hammond would close her legs when she is sitting. Good Lord. Well, that's something to... I think I better read out the previous comment to that. Otherwise, that's going to make no sense whatsoever. Poor Alison Hammond. Paul Claridge says, Phil, I can see your voice is utter drivel. A panel of minor celebrities trying to guess whether a wannabe celebrity is really singing or lip syncing. More fun to be had watching Russ paint a wall and then turning in every hour to watch the paint dry. Well, Paul, I appreciate that review, and I frankly believe that you should be submitting that to the likes of the Radio Times. I think that would go down very well. Have you thought of maybe getting a column actually in television reviews? Because I think with reviews like that, I'd take the word. You see, I would trust your word. If you're that open and honest, then I would suggest that I actually agree with that. Now, RK, can you hear us?
I can hear. Yeah, I've got another little headset that I use all the time for my audio. Can you hear
Right.
me?
Well, we can hear you, but I have to congratulate you. I think you sound quieter than you did before. But never. Anyway,
Mate.
say again. Hopefully, we'll have you back now.
This is just utter pants, isn't it?
That's better.
Pants.
That's right. Okay, let's read out some of these other messages, shall we, whilst we've got them. So in that case, we move on to Paul Andrews. I see a number of big London offices are now being converted to flats. Hallelujah. They should have been done ages ago. Martin Allen, we popped into London Saturday, loved it. We were going to pop over to Soho as I'm trying to get my stepson to join the whiskey club. Too right, Alan. Good work. Martin, I've just done what people do to me. I'm so sorry, Martin.
What's that, Dave?
Exactly.
All right, Dave?
Sorry about that,
Why'd you
Kane.
call me Dave? Because that's your name. Do you remember that?
I do indeed.
That's great. Go on, sorry, carry on.
Thank you, Kane. Right, anyway. Look, the problem is if we've all got first names as surnames, there's nothing I can do. It's not my fault. Anyway, I do get very confused, though. Anyway, Kimmy Lashmore says, my daughter works for a great architectural firm. She went on a course last week. Oh, wow, good work. To be a mental health first aider. Bravo, Kimmy.
Brilliant. Well done. Well done.
Oh, let's have a look and see. Martin Allens also says, I'm scheduled to have a meeting with agents for actors for my film. I was looking forward to being back into London, but they're working from home. Boring.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think one of the things we can say, and as I was meant to have, we've got a new show coming up on Men's Radio Station starting reasonably soon. It's going to be a very interesting show, lots of fun. And the guy said, well, let's have a meeting. And I thought, do you know what? I ain't doing that. That's finished for me. We can achieve so much more on Zoom, so much quicker, so much faster. I don't need to be face to face. I really don't, unless it's very important. I don't need to travel. It's a nonsense. It's evolved. It's like the fax and the telex machine history. And you don't need to be doing that anymore. It saves so much time. You gain an extra 2 hours a day, which can be put straight into productive work. And I think that's where it's going to be. And I think that's where it's going to remain.
If you don't mind me saying, then I very much look forward to seeing you over Zoom when we have our meeting next week.
That's entirely different. That's entirely different. No, because that is, well, because we were throwing lunch and all that sort of stuff. So that's not a good example. I'm talking about an example when it's pure business and you're just sitting down discussing stuff which you don't need to be sitting in the same room to sort out.
I am merely winding Russell up because I know full well we very much all look forward to that. So we've got a little we have a little team meeting next weekend. I think
we just have to sort out the location so to everybody's convenience. But we'll talk about that after the program. Yeah, I hate not seeing all the lovely comments because they just make the show for me. I just love seeing the comments scrolling up and down. But there we are.
Well, I shall be an official presenter's friend as I manage the comments on your behalf, RK.
It's a presenter's friend.
Ramsey Masala. Ramsey, why Masala? Me. Oh no, we've already had that one. Let's have a look and see what else we've got here. So I'm not being a very good presenter's friend. I do apologise. Right,
presenter's friend.
Oh, Stephen, really? Do you want to go down this route? Serious point. If there is another Scottish independence vote, surely this time around the whole of the UK should vote, not just Scotland, as it affects us all. That would be a truly democratic way to resolve. Now, Stephen, forgive me, because I don't want to see Scotland leave the United Kingdom. Truly, I don't.
No, nobody does.
Despite Nicola Sturgeon, I still don't want to see that. Might I suggest that that is exactly the same argument as saying that when we voted to leave the European Union, the rest of EU should have had the vote as well to say whether or not we leave or stay. I hate to say it, but that's a comparable argument.
You're quite right. You can't argue with that. That's logic, and that's impeccable logic, which is a little bit worrying coming from you, Phil.
I know. When did that happen?
Right. I don't get it. You know, I don't want to get into politics. It's a nonsense. But I think if I link it to mental health, the endless chipping away from Sturgeon and her cohorts is both exhausting, frustrating, irritating, and just annoying. And you just think, oh, not again. As soon as she turns up on telly, you go, oh, come on. Wow.
Do you know what's interesting?
It's an absolute obsession with her. That's what it is. It's fascinating.
But you know what's interesting, though, is that you do say that politics is not necessarily anything to do with mental health and well-being. But I tell you why I believe it is getting that way is because, and we've had this sort of conversation before, but because politics has become so unbelievably divisive, and the obsession, the absolute obsession to find what divides us rather than unites us, really is vomit. It is so horrific. I do not know what the matter with politicians is, but what I will say is that it does things to me. If I get too invested into it, I really get frustrated and feel really quite damaged as a result of it.
Do you get angry? Because I feel anger.
Probably angry.
I do get angry.
I found myself really angry at the results. Some of the results coming from this weekend just gone. But at the same time, I thought to myself afterwards, there's two things here. Number one, that's democracy. And democracy doesn't always go the way we want it to. It's just as simple as sometimes we win.
It is democracy. That's it. It's a democratic process and you have to abide by it and you have to adhere to it. Otherwise, it's anarchy. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we win, sometimes you lose. And as a result of it, I just think that if I am a believer in democracy, which I am, then I need to put up and shut up. It doesn't always have to go my way. But I do think that at the time when I found out some of the results, yes, I was absolutely angry about it because I just thought, if I'm honest, I actually thought, wow, some people are really quite stupid. But they are to me. They're probably clever to them. Who knows? It's opinion.
They don't agree with you and whatever. They don't agree with me. We don't agree with them. They think we're all horrible. We think they're all nuts. That's life. That's how it rolls in 2021, isn't it? That's really how it. There's no middle ground. There's no. What has gone and what is so damaging to mental health, without a doubt, is that Phil will agree to disagree. Now, can I get you a drink? Okay. Boom. How's the weather? How's the family? That's gone. You cannot say to anybody now that they just won't have it. We'll agree to disagree. No, they don't want to hear that. You're wrong and I'm right, and that's that. You can't live life. That's why life is constantly exhausting.
I wonder where that
constantly tiring and wearing.
But I really wonder where that comes from, because I have a suspicion that social media has played a part of it purely because
no two ways about it.
People have such rubbish.
It's pernicious. But
they have access to such rubbish that is not factually proven.
Of course they do.
And as a result of it, they think, well, I've seen it there, so it must be true.
It must be true because it's not a letter written in green ink, which is coming from somebody who really needs a lot of help, as we used to get on the radio many years ago. Now, do you know how I'd sum it up? And we were chatting about this over the week on Saturday, and Ray Gelato came up with the best phrase out of nowhere. We were talking about this, and he said, I honestly think the world is having a collective nervous breakdown. And I thought about that, and I thought that is the best encapsulation of how we've been living for the last 3 years, and certainly the last 2 years. I thought that was spot on. The world is having a collective nervous breakdown, and you just see people fragmenting into these extraordinary beliefs of theirs. If you think about social media for a minute, I use this example because it's accurate. Not long ago, anybody who said the world is flat was deemed to be an idiot, because the world is not flat. It is round. It is a globe. It is a sphere. This is a fact. Same as with gravity, things drop. It's a fact. But the flat earthers, because of very sophisticated YouTube videos, has grown exponentially. Now, the videos are complete and utter nonsense, but they're beautifully made. The presenters, instead of being swivel-eyed, mad-haired loons, are, very plausible, speak in a very modulated tone. And because of the style and the presentation, everyone's believing this guy. It's utter madness. It's a complete and utter lie. But the presentation of that lie is convincing. And people want to believe it. Why do they want to believe it? It's collective madness. It takes us back to the 13th century. This is the 21st century. What the hell are these people thinking? That's the level of it. And I can't understand it at all, Phil. I really can't understand it. The conspiracy theorists, they're bonkers.
The other problem, of course, is it's married up with the notion that people want to believe what they will believe what they want to believe, if you see what I mean. It's just the awful truth is, want something to be a certain way and someone out there has written it, then it must be true. And I just don't like what that does, because unfortunately it panders to the lowest common instinct that many people have, and that is that sheep mentality, the one where you just follow the crowd without actually checking what you're doing. Exactly the same way that if you were being led ultimately down a path that was over a cliff, okay, would you really be that trusting with somebody that you would just follow them willy-nilly and they'd walk over a cliff? I just don't think you'd do that. I don't understand.
I don't want to get into the politics. I really, I swore to myself we would try and avoid politics.
But I don't think this is about the politics. I think it's
it's kind of is following someone who has catastrophically failed time and again, and yet being held up as a great person. No, you failed diabolically. And then blaming other people's losing because you didn't follow this guy. This is the following over the cliff. This is the analogy that you've just given, following people straight over a cliff because you think they're right.
At the same time, though, if I've said 100 times before on the show, I am a great believer that it's so important not to get worked up about things that really are not in one's control to change anything, because it doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't make it any better. You know, I may very well disagree with policies of certain individuals, but if they've democratically been voted into power, then I just have to put up and shut up, because I can't change it. Certainly not for at least another 4
But
years.
Phil, you can't let people ride roughshod. If people are doing things which are catastrophic to the economy, or to health, or to well-being, or to racism, you have to stand up. You have to stand up.
You have to stand up, but you can't expect it to change, and if it doesn't, get annoyed about it, because that's out of your control.
I think
Getting annoyed is
if we extend the argument about, let's just say, voting. If you didn't vote, well, shame on you, because then for the next 4 years, or if it was a London election, 3 years, or whatever it might be, 3-4 years, you have no right to complain about anything, because in very simple terms, you couldn't be bothered to get off your ass or organize a postal vote, which is as simple as can be, and vote. So if you didn't vote, you have no say in the situation. So then you really do have to shut up and put up. If you voted, you're exercising your democratic right. People have died so they could vote. Countries around the world, which of course The Guardian, etc., never point a finger at, don't have a democratic process. We are incredibly lucky to have that democratic process. And if you don't exercise that right which has been given to you, and you know, if you think about the suffragette movement and all of that sort of thing, if you don't exercise that right, well, you have no right to comment and complain about anything at all. That's really how it is. Paul Claridge, I agree with Phil. There's no point getting stressed or upset about things which are beyond our immediate control or influence. I don't fully agree. If we take Egg Roast and Russ, as you know, 0 degrees latitude goes through London, and then goes through the North Pole. Where does it go then? That's when I don't even understand that, Ed, to be honest with you. I don't follow that at all. You're dealing with how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's just nonsense. The Earth is round, and that's what there is to it. Gravity exists. People get old. That's what happens. That's life, and it's the truth. And we're not immortal. Forgot where the hell I was. Forgot where I was. Oh yes. All right. Take closures of local roads. I'll come back to Ray Gelato in a minute. Closures of local roads. Some lunatic scheme brought about by basically the cycling lobby, closing roads. Ambulances struggle to get through, fire engines struggle to get through, all the emergency services do, and it's caused by shoving all the traffic on other roads, chaos. London's traffic, I can't speak for the others, but I'm meant to be somewhat of an expert on London's traffic back in the day. The average speed is now 9 miles an hour. 9. So if you're in an area which suddenly your road has been closed off with huge flower pots, right? And you want to complain, you're going to do something about it. Like in Ealing, they do something about it. They take the council on. Because who organised these things? So I think you do have to take action. You can't just sit there and go, my road's closed. Okay, fair enough. Do something about it. Make a fuss. And at least you've tried. That's the important thing. At least you've tried. And that's what I think is important. If you on huge scale things, there's nothing you can do. I was talking about this last night, that, you know, there we are putting our rubbish into recycling bins and being very frugal with everything that's in the decomposable bag, you know, with poo bags for dogs and all this sort of marvelous stuff. And then you see what's going on in India and China, and you go, we're a little tiny island stuck out in the North Sea. These gigantic industrial complexes, and especially India, China, probably Russia, Pakistan, putting my wrapper in a little paper, a separate bag. I'm happy to do it. I'll do my bit, as we all do. But it's kind of ludicrous, isn't it, in some way? I guess you have to start somewhere, but unless the big boys play along, we are wasting our time. That's what I think.
Happy days.
Don't you think? That's what I think. You know?
No, I do, but I'm just, how can I put it? I can't get worked up over stuff that I have no control over.
Well, you see, that's exactly my point. I'm agreeing with you. I can't go marching around saying, China, your pollution is disgraceful. India, get a grip. Pakistan, stop. You know, all these the major places. Oh, stop burning. They're not going to listen to me. They're not going to listen to you. They don't listen to anybody. They don't listen to their own citizens. Certainly not going to listen to foreigners like us. So there is nothing I can do about it. Absolutely nothing.
I'm just a great believer in that one doesn't have to agree with someone else, but just respect someone else. The fact that they're entitled to their opinion, they're entitled to their position.
None of it's raving mad.
Doesn't
None of
matter.
it's raving mad, Phil.
Mad to you. It's raving mad to you. It doesn't mean it.
Phil, all right, let's be grown up. If somebody hates people of color,
Mm-hmm.
an irrational loathing,
Right.
if somebody hates Jews, an irrational hatred, I don't have to respect that opinion.
Well, you think you're going to change it by getting angry?
I'm not going to change it, but I'm not going to respect them for it. You said we have to respect their opinion. I'm not going to respect them. I think they're dicks.
I didn't say respect their opinion. Respect the fact they're entitled to an opinion. I'm not asking you to join the plan.
They're entitled to it. Fine.
No, but they are. Sorry, you might not like it.
I won't like it. I won't like it anymore. I won't like it any more than you'd like it.
I don't like their opinion at all, but they're entitled to have it. Of course, they are entitled to have it.
Well, they are.
But
I
exactly,
can't argue with that. You can't change that.
Same,
You can't
to the same way that they do not agree probably with our stance, but they're still allowed to have that opinion if they want it, as long as it doesn't cause any harm to anyone. That's where it starts getting.
How, in terms of mental health, in the nation's well-being, how do you define harm?
Not quite. You have to go by what is written in law. That is our ultimate.
Therefore, you can do something about it. You legislate against it. You legislate against hatred as much as you can, as woolly as that definition might be. Let me ask you a question. And I'd like to throw this out to everybody. Last night, I watched YouTube documentaries all the time, and I came across a documentary about the comedian Roy Chubby Brown, who I'm sure you all are familiar with. He's never been mainstream. He's made an absolute fortune, more or less being off the mainstream grid. I think last time he was on television was on the Frank Skinner show, maybe 10 years ago. And before that, he hadn't been on TV for 10 years. He's incredibly busy, has always had a huge lifestyle, and is hugely popular. Now, his act, and this was a documentary, it wasn't saying what a great fellow he is. It was a sort of like a Louis Theroux thing, but I thought rather better, because it didn't have Louis Theroux's fake, faux innocence and thickness, which drives me mad. It's an act, and we've seen it, Louis. Move on. And they showed bits from his act, and it was like, God, some of it is funny and some of it is shocking. And I'm liberal with a small L as much as you can get. I am not a tree hugger, as everybody knows, but some of it is so deeply offensive. But the argument goes with the audience. When they ask the audience, remember people going in, and they ask the audience, they say, well, we pay our money, we can see what we want. You know what you're going to get. Now, with like Roy Chubby Brown, for example, you know what you're going to get. You're not going to get subtle humor. You're going to get racism, misogynism, all of those things. If you find it funny, that's one thing. Is that harmful? You see, that's the argument, Phil. Is it harmful? Because it's not harming me. It's not harming you. And people elect and choose to go there. His Christmas DVDs sell hugely. They're huge every year. Annual DVD of one of his shows.
Look, one would assume that the definition of causing harm is when there is a physical attempt at somebody to harm them. Mental definition of that very difficult to comprehend because I don't think I'm clever enough to say what that definition would be. I admit it. I have no idea. Okay, I'll psychologists, because they'll be able to tell you what's mentally damaging to someone or not. But I would suggest that as long as one has the option to turn the other cheek and to walk away from it, to ignore it and not to be impacted by it, which in Roy Chubby Brown's case, you absolutely can. You don't have to watch his programs.
No, you don't. That's my point.
Then I would say that that's okay. Where I would start to think it causes harm is when it starts going mainstream and people start making judgments based on something they've heard. I don't think for a second they'll do that with someone who's a comedian and who's known as a comedian, dresses like a comedian. For heaven's sakes, you take Roy Chubby Brown seriously, then I question you, frankly.
That's his point. His point. He said, you can't take me seriously. Look how I'm dressed.
Look, I mean, where are we? Okay, so we've got a couple of comments coming in here.
But you know what? Just one thing I wanted to say, and you know what I came at the end of the documentary, which was really very interesting. It showed his home life and him, and he maintained, of course, that the character of Roy Chubby Brown is very different from Royston. I've forgotten his surname. Excuse me. The real person. It's an act. But when in conversation with his mates, you can see that they're pretty fused together.
Vasey.
But at the end of it, I came out thinking, thank you, Royston Vasey. Thank you very much.
Thank Paul Claridge.
I wish I could see it. Thanks, Paul. But at the end of it, do you know what? I came out and I was shocked at myself, thinking, I'd rather have Roy Chubby Brown, where I can elect to watch or not watch. It's not my cup of tea, but I can choose not to do it, rather than being told by the woke brigade, who have just taken over like
far too much oxygen.
So I would rather have Roy Chubby. At the end of it, I thought, as much as I don't find it funny, I'd rather have him than the humorless woke people any day. Can't bear it.
Look, I think what it boils down to is that when you have someone who is a comedian who is politically incorrect, then you have a choice to listen or not listen. If you have a politician who is responsible for policy changes that could impact on people's lives based on their race, then that's a very different story altogether, and absolutely not something that I would ever endorse or like to see happen. Stephen Marsh says it all boils down to the age-old adage, I once read, the world would be a wonderful place if it wasn't for people. Paul Andrews, but not every opinion is quite as diverse as love or hate. The problem is that everything is being made so clear-cut, right or wrong, left or right. Life is far more shades. Ed Grossman.
It is.
Ed Grossman says, Phil, listen. I can't listen. You're not talking to me. I'll read it instead. The anti-fascist movement in the 1960s made it totally clear. Do not debate with fascists. You smash them and hard. Cut out this respect stuff. Nope, I won't. I respect anyone and everyone.
I'm with Ed on that.
Fine.
I can't help it. I'm with it. Look, let me tell you. Today's my dad's birthday. He would have been 102 today, my dad. And he and his brothers fought running battles. They were all East End boys, Whitechapel, as it happens. And he and his brothers fought running, and Ed will know where I'm going with this. They fought running battles in the streets around Whitechapel and the East End of London with Mosley's black shirts. They weren't going to enter a debate with them. They beat the crap out of them. The same way that the black-shirted fascists under Oswald Mosley wanted to beat the crap out of whole sections of society.
Exactly.
You can't have a reasoned debate. You're not going to have a chat with these people.
I'm not asking you to have a debate with black shirts. I'm saying that everyone is entitled to their opinion. And if you have a look at someone like the black shirts, who clearly their modus operandi was to go around destroying people who got in their way of their policies and their belief system, absolutely. Got to fight fire with fire on that front. But
hang on. So you're agreeing with Ed on that? Because you just didn't. I find this fascinating. You didn't agree with Ed a second ago, but now you're saying fight fire with fire.
No, I'm
not saying it's a subtle solution, walking around with a baseball bat. Of course it's not.
Okay, well, let me be clear. If for any second you think that I'm sort of contradicting myself here, I'll make it very clear. I respect very clearly. I respect the fact that people are entitled to their opinions. I do not have to agree with those opinions, and they don't have to agree with my opinions. That is where I stand.
Fair enough. I get that.
If you have someone who is a black shirt, a die-hard black shirt, who would happily go round beating somebody up because of the color of their skin or because of their religious beliefs, okay? Absolutely, fire with that. I'm not asking you to have a conversation with somebody like that. The point I'm trying to make is, as long as no one is going to inflict harm on someone else, and arguably the black shirts, guess what? They wanted to inflict harm. So I'm using them as an example. But if someone has an opinion, that as long as it doesn't cause physical harm or physical damage to someone or their property, leave them to that opinion. They are entitled to that opinion as long as they don't inflict others with it. Exactly the same way, I do not believe that someone has the right to inflict an opinion if it is either racist, sexist, whatever you want to call it, whatever that opinion might be. If it's an opinion based on hate, they don't have any right to inflict that opinion on others. And those who are completely the polar opposite of that don't have any right whatsoever to inflict their beliefs on others. It's individualistic. It's up to the individual to decide what their beliefs are, as long as they keep those beliefs to themselves and they don't inflict it on others, don't cause any harm to others.
But they don't, because they are the prophets. They're evangelists. They have to spread the word.
And I don't agree with that.
But that's the point. That's the point I'm making. That's the very point. Because if you just sit back and do nothing, you can't. You can't. And that's why we're tired. That's why we're exhausted. That's why we're edgy. That's why we have ranging from low-level anxiety to full-blown depression. All of these things are acting upon us on a subliminal level, on a subtextual level. We don't even see it. I don't watch the news.
Ed Grossman.
I don't watch the news deliberately.
Ed Grossman. Phil, hold on. No, you know that Hitler was democratically elected. What does that tell you?
Well, that's the point.
What do you want?
I mean, he was a raving lunatic who industrially, on an industrial scale, murdered 6 million people, caused the death of tens of millions of people. He was democratically elected.
Okay, so what exactly would you like me to say to that? I've just said I don't agree.
Would you have opposed? God forbid we were there, right? Because we've been on the first plane out. But right, God forbid you were there, right? God forbid, a million times. Would you have opposed him?
Well,
or would you have said, well, they're entitled to their opinion?
Would I have opposed him?
Well, but there you are, before you were shipped off alongside me in a train and then gassed. I mean, let's be honest about it, right? But the point Ed's making, it's a very subtle point, and it's clever. Okay. The guy was democratically elected. He was raving bloody mad. So were the people around him. They were lunatics.
Okay. I will say it again if I thought it was going to sink in. Opinion. No, not you. I'm getting more annoyed, frankly, with the comments here, like sort of from Ed. What are you talking about? So comparing it to Hitler. I know he was democratically elected, but as I said earlier on, and
he's taking the argument. What Ed's doing, I'm assuming, if I can't see the comments, I'm a little bit disadvantaged. But
okay,
because Ed, all right. What I'm saying to you, you can't feel that you can't give everyone free speech. Well,
but why not? What are you doing? You can't
all
give
right, let's
be entitled.
Let's bring it. Let's come out of 1930s Germany. Let's bring it to 2019, 2018 London, the UK. Sorry, the UK, not London. Right? Free speech. If everybody should have the right to worship, everybody. I was going to say that's a God-given right, but that sounds even weirder. All right. So if you have a religion, you should be absolutely have the right to follow whatever religion you want to. Not my business, it's your business. If a person within a religious building is spouting absolute hatred under the guise of free speech, and that hatred is really trying to incite loathing, distrust, and ultimately violence, does that still come under the aegis of that's free speech, that's okay, or that should be stopped because it is clearly dangerous?
No, that is against the law. So if it is against the law, then I absolutely don't condone it. There are laws in place against hatred speech. You know, hate speech is very different to free speech. And I don't think that the two should be conflated, because I think it's more often than not that people will accuse someone of hate speech when actually it's freedom of speech. And that's a dangerous business. If something,
because now you got somebody. You see, this is what's happened. This is why I hate the woke bullshit. Somebody looks at you the wrong way, you can go to the police. Somebody talks to you in a slightly way that you don't like, you can go to the police. How long did it take to get rid of Abu Hamza? How many years? Was it 10 years, 7 years?
Lose track, I don't know.
So the point is, you've got that of a man inciting actual violence, and now we've got to a stage. Oh, I didn't like the way he looked at me. What do you mean? I didn't like the way he looked. Didn't like the way he was looking at me in a weird way. Did you look at so-and-so in a weird? I mean, this is where we've got to. It's
right.
nuts.
My point, I believe, was quite simple. If something is within the confines of the law, then I have no problem with someone having an opinion. If someone breaks the law, and freedom of speech and hate speech are two very separate matters, right? If someone is preaching hatred, that's illegal. I'm not for it, and I absolutely don't condone it. But if you are talking about someone having the right to have an opinion that doesn't cause harm to anyone else, doesn't encourage hatred towards anyone else, but they keep that to themselves and don't say it to the masses, then I have no problem with that. That is totally their right to have that opinion. You don't have to agree with it. It really is as simple as that.
Okay.
I'm not asking anyone.
So the grey area, and I'm just using him as an example. If you come back to Roy Chubby Brown, just for a second, did I find the stuff funny? I personally, I don't. I've seen hours of his stuff. Did I find it funny? No. Am I a fan? No, I'm not. Do I admire someone who's carved a career for 30 plus, nearly 40 years? Yeah, anyone who could do that. That's a trick, right? Filling out theatres, that's, okay. Some of the content of his, do I find his material, some of it you laugh at and some of it you just find distasteful. But the point is, you can switch it off. You don't have to buy a ticket for his show. But my argument is, my question, not my argument, because I don't know the answer. If you're in that audience, you've paid your money, you've gone along, and somebody for a 2-hour show is making racist, derogatory comments the whole time, and everybody gets it. That's his point. Everybody gets it. Black, brown, Jews, Catholics, it doesn't matter. Everybody's a target. So it's an equal opportunities employer, if you like. Does that seep into somebody's subconscious? Or do they just see it as a joke? But I would still rather have him than the woke brigade every day.
Look, I would argue it's very simple. I think that when you have a comedian who is not there to try and brainwash or influence people in a way that encourages them to go around hating other communities and other people, then I would say there is nothing in that. You might not like it, you might not agree with the humor, but there is still nothing categorically wrong with that. Where I think there's something dreadfully wrong is when you have someone who stands up in say, for example, a religious community where they believe following what their preacher tells them to the letter is going to give them a good life and a long life and a happy life and all of that malarkey. Then that is dangerous, because they would do almost as they're told. When you go to see a comedian who's going to say something that's a bit politically incorrect, they might laugh, but it doesn't mean to say they're going to go away thinking that whatever the butt of that joke was is the cause of their anguish. So I don't see that being a problem.
We could really talk about this for hours. It's a really interesting point, because I wonder, on a mental health level, whether bit by bit you see people in another way. See what I'm saying? You see some people as second-class citizens because would it seep into your subconscious? I don't know. But my argument is this. You have the choice to switch it off, to not buy it. Well, you won't find him on TV, so you won't have that. You have the choice. Don't buy the DVD. Don't buy a ticket to the shows. It's very simple. Then you have no problem. And he's not preaching at us, whereas some of the stuff of the BBC, for God's sake, it is endless. And that's why I don't watch the news, because it's endless. Preachers, tell me what the news are. Tell me the facts, not your interpretation of the facts. I'm an adult. I'm over 21 by a long way. I'll work that out for myself.
Do you know what's extraordinary is that the BBC for a long time now have actually had a section on their website where they have different reporters, and they have a section in a news story called analysis. And what that is where they actually have that reporter as good as offer their opinion on the story, as good as offer their opinion. It's supposed its origins were to be broken down. In other words, to try and break it down so you understand it more clearly as to how something translates. Or I don't mean translates in English. I just mean translates in the sense that the crux of the story is what I'm trying to say. Now, I think that that's one of the most dangerous parts. You don't need analysis. What you need.
That's my point.
End of. That's it. Now,
just give the facts.
There are
what has happened and why we are. Why I'd rather have Roy Chubby Brown for 2 hours than Newsnight or something is because, not that I find it funny, but it's because it's this constant drip feed of this is the way you are supposed to think. This is what you're allowed to think. I'm not with that at all.
And this is the last one from Ed, because otherwise I'm fueling the fire here. But he says, Russ, Phil's generation does not see it as we do. Well, Ed, you're quite right. I absolutely don't see it as you do, clearly. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really think that's a problem, because it actually feeds quite nicely into Lisa's comment, Lisa Jen's comment, where she says, I really think this is a generational thing. My father would have been accused of being racist back in the day with his jokes, etc., and his best mate was black. However, now this younger generation are being fed to be sensitive, which in my opinion is causing more problems. Couldn't agree more. This is mental health work, guys. I couldn't agree more.
That's the point. It is mental. That's exactly why the conversation. We didn't know what we were going to start talking about today, but both Phil and I, and you really do play along. And I thank you, everybody all over the world who are watching and listening. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Without you, we don't have a show. But it is about mental health, because it is the pressures that you feel yourself under. I can't say this, I can't do that. It's a constant pressure. And I'm not talking about the bad old days where women in offices were not safe. I'm not talking about that. It's completely unacceptable. Of course it is. I'm talking about that you've got to the stage where I can
where did that come from? That's not. Hang on. That's not what this is about. I don't think anyone.
It is about. It's degrees. It's degrees. I don't want anyone to think, oh, let's bring it all back to the good old day. No, certain things were absolutely systemically wrong.
Well, can I point out as well that I don't know whether or not if people have actually realized this, but if you go back in time and analyze each decade as it happened, funnily enough, there was always a problem or two with those decades. So whenever anyone thinks the good old days, actually stop and think about what the problems were then and compare them to the problems we've got now. There's no escape. There was never a happy time, honestly. You might have been happier in a different time in history, but it doesn't mean they were around.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely 100% correct, because you go through any decade, whatever it might be, from 1900 onwards, and you would think, oh my God, thank God I wasn't born then, because really people have never had so much liberty.
And this is why they're grumping about coronaviruses, because suddenly those liberties have, for temporary reasons, been taken away. And that's why people are getting so grumpy about all this. Michael Verby says, rather chubby than woke. We analyze things too much these days. 100%. We analyze too much.
What was the beginning of Michael's comments? It's so frustrating. I can't see them. I'm so sorry.
he says rather chubby than woke.
Oh, right. Thank you. I got it. Yes.
You analyze things too much these days. He's absolutely spot on. The over-analysis of everything is just appalling. It's so horrific. And unfortunately, what the problem is, and I suspect that comes from there's too much option to analyze because there's no escape. The fact that we have rolling news 24/7 means that you need to fill that time. If we go back to a situation where actually we go back to having the mid-morning news, the lunchtime news, and then the evening bulletin and the nighttime news, well, guess what? There wouldn't be so much nonsense to fill.
Someone once said to me, isn't it amazing? There's always enough news to fill up a newspaper. Just the right amount to fill up the right number of pages. Extraordinary when you think about it. But as Phil says, the pressure, this obsession, we've got to have rolling news. Well, you know what? We don't. It's fine. We've got to, and they have to fill it. And because they have to fill it, because things are not happening all the time, we don't want to know about what's happened to the tortoise at number 37 up the right. That's not news, right? So they've got to fill it. What do they fill it with? They fill it with opinion. With opinion.
Paul Andrews is in hysterics. BBC News just called Nicola Sturgeon Prime Minister of Scotland. Whoops.
Unbelievable.
Her press release got through then. That will upset a few. Yes, or indeed.
She's obsessed. This is a woman obsessed. I mean, I've given up kind of following because I don't care. But I just don't. I got other fish to fry. But this is a woman obsessed.
Kimmy makes an argument.
Oh yeah, no. Kimmy, never think that Phil and I are angry. We're just, if we both came out and said exactly the same thing, it would be as dull as dishwater.
I agree.
As dull as Newsnight.
See what I did there?
We don't. Yeah. It's not like that at all. That's the whole point. If we can't preach the fact that we should be able to say, you know what, let's agree to disagree. And you'd have a virtual handshake because I won't ever shake hands again. And I just won't. And then go and have a drink in the bar or whatever. That's absolutely fine. We're not that, Kimmy, we're not that sensitive. I want to know which garden centre we just want to rock up quietly.
Oh, don't worry. Kimmy's messing.
Oh, has she? Is it anywhere near where we can go?
Absolutely nowhere near.
Oh,
but it's fine.
No,
don't worry. Actually, to be fair, she's not 100 miles from you, but it's quite a schlep from me. But it's fine.
Yeah, look, everything where you live compared to where I live, everything is an epic Vasco da Gama journey. The only thing missing is Magellan at the prow of the ship. You know, everything's like.
Lisa raises the very valid point, one of which that I wholeheartedly agree with. She says, "Okay, I'm just going to put this out there. I feel the reason for so many teenagers breaking the law, carrying knives, bullying, etc., is because parents, teachers, and the police have lost their authority. You so much as lay a finger on a kid and they scream assault. The world has gone mad. I am so glad I was brought up in a different era." And Lisa, to tell you the honest truth, I couldn't agree with you more.
That is a huge subject. We could take up a whole show with that. But you know, at the heart of Lisa's point,
at a basic level, it's a bit like training a dog. If you don't tell a dog it's wrong to defecate in the house, then guess what? They're going to defecate in the house. It's as simple as.
Hang on, that's wrong. Oh
what?
God.
Oh, sorry, I see what you did there.
Every day's a school day, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I hope you've enjoyed today. I've thoroughly enjoyed today because it is, the thing about it is, because people get heated, it's about stress. It comes down to stress, and stress is just shocking for mental health. It's exhausting. It's tiring. It leads to physical ailments. There's no two ways about it. You know, that's how it is.
Let's just be happy that we have a place that we can all voice our opinion, be heard, and care to share. Because that's exactly what we do. It is the Daily Show. He's Russ Kane. I'm Phil Dave. And that's pretty much all we've got time for today. So I very much hope, and I'm sure Russ agrees with this. I don't know. Can we end on an agreement, maybe? I very much hope that you will join us on Wednesday at midday when we do this all over again. Who knows what we're going to talk about? Thank you very much. By the way, one or two of you saying how you have enjoyed the show today, despite the stress and the debate. Well, why not? Indeed, that's precisely our mission.
And it came out of nowhere. There you go. It's like magic, isn't it?
Bye.